It's the All of the Above Energy Podcast. 1 year ago, Oklahoma's business reputation in the renewable energy field was in tatters. A series of legislative efforts aimed at harming some elements of renewable energy had failed, but the unmistakable message had been sent. Oklahoma was not regarded as a trustworthy partner for the renewable industry. Now a new governor and a new administration is changing that reputation. In this episode, I visit with Oklahoma Department of Commerce Director Brent Kisling. Our conversation covers everything that the Department of Commerce wanted during the 2019 legislative session, including more funding for the Governor's Quick Closing Fund and the change in attitude towards the renewable energy industry.
You're listening to the new media. You're listening to Mitchell Talks. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter at Mitchell Talks.
It was a great session for job growth. It really was, and there was a strong focus on that, even if it wasn't legislation that dealt specifically with the Department of Commerce or funding for the Department of Commerce or some of our programs. It seemed like job growth and economic growth was woven into every decision that was made this year. I know it was part of the policy priorities for the Stitt administration. It's certainly shown at the end. There were some big things that specifically happened with the Department of Commerce. First of all, the biggest was a significant increase in funding for the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. That's a program that has been around since 2012. It's historically gotten anywhere from $1 million to $4 million a year into it. And this year, there was $5 million put into it early in the session, and then another $14 million toward the end of the session. So it was a significant amount of funding in there that'll really get us over the top and make us competitive when we work with work to compete against other states for projects. But then some other things that came out of it was our ACES program, which is our Aerospace Commerce Economic Services program. They put $1 million into that program this year to help us market the state for aerospace jobs. And then a new program that they added was a marketing program for automobile manufacturers. We have some of the best incentive programs in the world for automobile manufacturing, and we believe that's one of those new things we can focus on. The legislature saw that as well and put some funding into that. The Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund, it's something that, I'd say maybe half of the states have a closing fund like this, and I relate it to like NBA basketball. Everybody is trying to assemble their team. Every state is trying to assemble their team. They go through the draft, and they get the right guards and the folks that are in the middle of the lane, and everybody tries to do that. And actually in economic development, a lot of those states are very similar, just like in the NBA with the teams that they put together. And then as you get through the playoffs, you might have to add things like low-cost incentives or low-cost land, low costs to do business when it comes to taxes and permits and fees, speed to business. All of those get you through the playoffs and get you through competition on projects a little further. The Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund is really the last-second three-point shot in Game 7 in order to get you across the line to win a project. A lot of states have it. They leave it to the discretion of the governor as to whether those dollars are expended. In Oklahoma, we make sure that the dollars that we expend are going to be a net benefit positive to the state. There has to be more money coming back to the state through taxes, permitting, and fees than what we pay out through the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. Plus, just this year, we added some additional transparency in that the companies that receive the dollars will be agreeing to allow some of their payroll and FTE numbers to be released publicly. To me, that's what a company should expect if they're receiving public funds, and in Oklahoma, we have that in place now. Well, in Oklahoma, it's pretty easy to look at things like Boeing with several thousand aerospace engineers. We probably wouldn't have that here if it wasn't for the Quick Action Closing Fund, the Macy's project in Northeast Oklahoma. I can just go on and on. There's been a number of those that happen. But actually, there's a lot of companies that we would probably be out of the game much earlier than we thought we would be if we didn't have the option for a closing fund. Sometimes, as you get to the end of a project, there's those little expenses that need to be done, maybe the extension of a utility line or extension of rail to the site, and the closing fund can help you get over that capital gap that sometimes happens with a project. Well, a budget surplus certainly helps with everybody's attitudes, that's for sure. But I do think Governor Stitt does need some credit for that, as does the Speaker of the House and the Senate Pro Tem. They worked very closely together throughout the whole legislative session, making sure that if there were battles to be fought, they weren't fought through press releases. They were actual discussions that happened, and resolutions were made, and compromises were made. And it did make my job a whole lot easier because there was civility in the discussions this year, and I truly believe at the end of the day we ended up with a budget and a set of laws that were signed by the governor that are pro-growth, and they're going to reap benefits for years to come. Well, I think a lot of that is behind us now, and really the legislation that passed this year and some that passed last year helped to contribute to that. What both sides wanted, and I hate even saying both sides because they were really working together the whole time, but the military training routes, really anything that flies in the sky, working in partnership with folks who want to build things that are tall. Those don't always mix real well together, but both sides just wanted to make sure that there are strong, solid, black and white lines in the sand of where we could build and not have any problems, and where we could build and develop and there would be problems. And I believe the legislation this year really helped with that. And the thing that gives me encouragement is after it was signed into law, you saw the military bases, Department of Defense celebrating its passage, press releasing it. You saw the wind industry also celebrating it. I spent last week at the American Wind Energy Conference down in Houston, interacting with a lot of those folks, and they were very excited. And a lot of the states are looking at what we did to mimic, because that's the way it should be. Nobody wants to build something 500 feet in the air if they think there's going to be planes flying by at a low altitude. We just needed to identify where those areas were, put them on a map, and folks know you just don't build in that area. Skeleton Creek is, I think it's, if not under construction, it will be in the next several weeks. And all the product is already up in the Enid area. I do know there's been a couple of projects lately that have had to cancel, which again, both everybody celebrates as a way that the process is actually working for us. For me, the big thing that we've got to look at now that we've figured out the development, now that we've figured out that this is a mature industry in our state, let's go after the supply chain. We should be making wind turbine blades all over the place, just like we do with the oil and gas industry now. We make components for oil and gas because it's such a mature industry. Same thing with aerospace. We brought in the industry and we make those components now. But wind hasn't followed, and some of it's because of the reputation, I think, and some of the comments that have been made the last couple of years. But I know with the conversations I've had with companies lately, they are now starting to look at our area again. They know that we're a pro-business state, and we don't pick and choose what businesses we're going to be in favor of. Part of our vision for the state of Oklahoma is we should be electrifying the United States. We are perfectly situated geographically, being part of the Southwest Power Pool and the interchange agreements that they have with some of the other power pools, with other population centers throughout the United States. We shouldn't just be exporting wheat and cotton and oil and natural gas. We should be exporting electricity out of here. We should be turning natural gas into electricity. We should be turning hydrocarbons into it, and wind and solar, and sending that to the rest of the United States. And we are quickly moving that direction as a state and really as a region. sometimes we get a little anti-Texas and get very competitive. But I would just soon their economy continue to grow up into our area, because we are a force to be reckoned with whenever we're tied in with Texas. And I would love to see us electrifying the United States. We should be exporting that product everywhere. Well, it's interesting that a new governor comes in only a couple of weeks before the session starts. And so you really are baptized by fire into that session. And we really have been this year at the Department of Commerce. I believe we hit the ground running and had a good pipeline of projects that were happening. But I've personally had to stay pretty close to the legislature and making sure that we have the environment in place where growth can happen. Now I'm going to be spending a lot more time on the road, finding out some of the specific needs and challenges that we have in our communities, because the Department of Commerce does not create jobs. We don't do that ourselves. We create an environment where it happens, but we're a service organization, and we are here to service our local communities as they grow. And so we'll be figuring more of that out over the next several months.
You're listening to the new media, the Mitchell Talks Network. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter @MitchellTalks.